What's up, you guys? My name is Aubrey and this is my channel, and today we're going to be talking about the speech that President Joe Biden gave this evening. As I'm recording this, President Joe Biden just finished about an hour or so ago, and what I'm going to be doing today is I'm going to be breaking down some of the key things that he talked about, some of the key things that were left out, and more importantly, what this means for this $4 trillion infrastructure bill that we've been talking about a lot on this channel. Now, I am currently in the middle of South Dakota, which is why this is a different scenery behind me, but don't worry, I will be returning to my studio tomorrow, so stay tuned for that video as well. So let's get started. Now, my original plan with this video was to do a full deep dive into not only President Joe Biden's speech, but also the details of the American Families Plan, which is the second part of this $4 trillion infrastructure bill that was announced last month. Now, unfortunately, there is a lot that was covered in this speech, and because of that, I'm not going to be able to do a deep dive of both. Instead, what I'm going to be talking about in this specific video is the specific details of this speech, what he talked about in relation to the American Families Plan, what are some of the notable things that were left out of this speech, and then in tomorrow's video, I will be diving into the exact details of the Families Plan because there is a lot of information that was not discussed in the speech, but is included in the Family Plan. So if you're interested in learning about that and learning what programs it funds, what things could benefit you, your family, or your kids, then make sure to subscribe and make sure to hit the notification bell so that you don't miss a single video because that one will be going live tomorrow. So with that, let's dig into the exact details of the speech. So as I'm recording this video, it is Wednesday, April 28th, and President Joe Biden just concluded this speech about an hour ago. But as you guys are watching this video, it is Thursday, April 29th, and the day that you guys are watching this marks the 100th day that President Joe Biden is in office. And as you can expect, this was a key focus on the speech. And because of this, he spent a good portion of the beginning of the speech really going over what has been accomplished over this 100 days. The speech itself was quite long. It was an hour and a half, and the first 30 minutes or so of that speech was really dedicated to highlighting some of the key accomplishments of the administration in this first 100 days. Some of these key accomplishments that President Joe Biden highlighted were things like the American Rescue Plan, which was that third stimulus check that we saw last month. That stimulus check included things like a child tax credit, $1,400 stimulus checks, extended unemployment, and more. There was also discussions and a highlight on the fact that we are currently at 220 million doses of COVID-19 vaccines administered across the United States, which is quite a significantly larger amount than what was the original goal of 100 million vaccines in the first 100 days. According to the speech, 90% of Americans live within 5 miles of a vaccination site, and as of recently, anybody over the age of 16 years old can qualify for a COVID-19 vaccine. In addition to key COVID-19 and vaccine data, President Joe Biden also mentioned the effectiveness of the American Rescue Plan and cited that 85% of American households have received and been distributed the $1,400 stimulus checks, which not only helped people pay for rent, pay for groceries, but also helped stimulate the economy as well. There was also a brief mention on key government loan programs like the EIDL and the PPP and the effectiveness of those programs, as well as the benefit that programs like the child tax credit will have going into the rest of 2021. Now, as you guys know, the child tax credit has not been implemented as of yet. It's being implemented in July, and so it was really kind of the predictions of what this type of benefit will have rather than what benefit it has had already, because it has not been implemented as we sit here today. And really one of the last things that were discussed in kind of this list of key accomplishments was the pace in which the American economy is growing, which as of right now is a pace of 6% by the end of 2021. But after about this 30-minute mark, that's whenever President Joe Biden started to go into some of the details of some of the future goals and future projections for lawmakers and for Americans as a whole. And this is where he really started to dive into legislation that is going to be a focus for not only the rest of 2021, but also 2022, 2023, and 2024. Now, there were a lot of different things discussed in this speech and a lot of different pieces of legislation that were kind of brought on the table during this speech as well. But for the sake of not going all over the place, I'm going to be strictly discussing the kind of stimulus spending and economical bills and acts that are being discussed. I'm not going to dive into those other details that he discussed as well. So keep in mind moving forward in this video that what I'm discussing is not everything that he discussed. It's specifically just in relation to stimulus and spending bill related content. Now with it, the very first thing that he mentioned as far as looking forward in the US economy was the American Jobs Plan. I've talked about this a lot on the channel, so I'm just going to breeze through it right here. But the American Jobs Plan is an 8-year plan that's valued at about $2 trillion. And really the focus of this plan is traditional infrastructure. Things like roads, railways, travel, transportation, bridges, ports, and things like that. In addition to just improving our physical infrastructure, it also has a huge emphasis on clean energy and job creation, and really intertwines those two things into one key goal of creating clean energy and really making clean energy a focus in the US, but by doing that, it will then create millions of jobs at the same time. In fact, the American Jobs Plan and the focus on jobs creation with that plan was definitely something that President Joe Biden wanted to drive home, and he really wanted to emphasize that point. It was mentioned extensively not only in the context of clean energy and job creation in the clean energy sector, but also job energy creation and the effort of making water cleaner to drink and safer to drink, as well as a handful of other examples as well. So it is very obvious that President Joe Biden is trying to sell this bill as not only being an infrastructure bill, but also being a job creation bill as well. He did also state that the American Jobs Plan is going to be the biggest infrastructure bill that has been introduced since World War II, and he also stated that 75% of all of the jobs that are going to be created through this plan are not going to be jobs that require an associate's degree or higher. So you could simply get one if you just have a high school diploma, which is quite significant. Now, he also touched on a number of kind of secondary bills that are being brought on the table, but certainly don't have the spotlight of the American Jobs Plan or the American Families Plan. A handful of these included the Protect the Right to Organize Act, also known as the PRO Act, which is an act that protects people's right to organize and to unionize. Another example is the Paycheck Fairness Act, which is an act with an emphasis on creating equal pay for men and women, as well as a push to increase the minimum wage to $15 per hour. Next is the American Families Plan. And once President Joe Biden went through the past accomplishments, once he touched on the American Jobs Plan, once he touched on some of his other kind of efforts that he's wanting to push forward as well, he then touched on the American Families Plan, which is what many of you guys are interested in on this channel. Now, the American Families Plan is the social infrastructure portion of this bill. Now, this infrastructure bill is 2 parts, and in total, it is valued at about $4 trillion. The first part is the American Jobs Plan, which I discussed earlier. The second part is a nearly $2 trillion, but actually $1.8 trillion social infrastructure bill, with the focus on social ventures rather than infrastructure ventures. Now, I'm not going to get into all of the details of what is included in the American Families Plan. I will go into that in tomorrow's detail, but here are a handful of the things that President Joe Biden mentioned in his speech. The president dubbed this as a once-in-a-lifetime investment and stretched that this addresses the biggest challenges for American families and American children. Now, the first challenge that this addresses is education and access to education, as well as the cost of education. Now, with the American Families Plan, it would make community college free for all Americans for 2 years. So you would be able to theoretically get an associate's degree for free. In addition to free community college for 2 years, you would also have access to free preschool as well. Now, the preschool aspect of this equation would be funded by both the federal government as well as the state level governments as well. But again, I'll dive into this in a bit more detail tomorrow. Now, the reason behind this, at least stated in the speech, for this additional 4 years of education is the fact that 12 years of free education is not enough. And by 12 years, we mean 1st through 12th grade, which is the standard for American school systems. And so by adding 2 years at the front of that and then 2 years at the back of that, we can begin to compete with some of these other countries that are beating us educationally. In addition to education, there is also going to be a huge push in making childcare more accessible and more affordable as well. In this bill, it is included that low to middle income families will not have to pay more than 7% of their total income for childcare for children 5 and below. And in some cases, the lowest earning families will not have to pay anything. So it caps the amount of money that families are required to spend for childcare. In addition to just capping the amount of money that an individual or family has to pay for childcare, there's also discussions on the table to allow for tax credits to also assist in the affordability of childcare as well. But again, I'll dive into that in tomorrow's video. There is also the discussion of providing families with 12 weeks worth of paid family leave. Now, this could come in the context of maternity leave, paternity leave, as well as assisting and caring for a sick or dying family member. So you would be able to get paid family leave in the case of any of these and so much more instances as well. Now, this would be guaranteed paid family leave, so you wouldn't have to get it through your employer, you wouldn't have to get it through your insurance. It would be something that would be provided by the government. Now, the exact details of how this would work and what your compensation would be for this 12 weeks, this is still something that is very much up in the air. But as of right now, the idea is to provide 12 weeks worth of paid family leave because of health or family related issues. And the last point that I want to talk about in relation to this speech, but certainly not the last point of the American Families Plan, is the child tax credit. Now, you guys know that with this most recent stimulus package that was passed last month, there was the child tax credit that was implemented, which is $3,600 for children 5 and below, and $3,000 for children 6 and above, up until the age of 17. Now, this is going to come in the form of not only a lump sum payment come tax season, but also in the form of monthly payments up until then. Now, President Joe Biden mentioned in his speech the desire to extend this out until 2025. Now, this would be absolutely huge for working families if this was actually to become a reality. Now, again, as I stated in my video yesterday, nothing that is stated in this speech is set in stone. Just because it is proposed that this could become a reality certainly does not mean it will. But if this does, it certainly will be big news. And it means that people who qualify for the child tax credit could receive either lump sum payments at the end of the year or monthly payments through 2025. Now, two other points I would like to mention, and the first one is how we will pay for this. Now, this is something that I've done individual videos on in the past, so I'll just touch on it here. But President Joe Biden did touch on it on his speech as well, because it's something that is a natural question to ask. We want all of these things like universal child care, like free community college, like affordable health care, but how is that going to get paid for? And this was something that he did address. Now, first and foremost is no tax increases for people making under $400,000 per year. Now, this is something that President Joe Biden has talked about since he was on the campaign trail. It's something he's talked about since he began the discussions of becoming president, and it's something that he has continued discussing throughout his presidency as well. The one very interesting thing about this comment, though, is the fact that he has stated repeatedly throughout his presidency, nobody making under $400,000 will see a tax increase. But last week, Jen Psaki, who is President Joe Biden's press secretary, stated that this may be the case for married couples as well, meaning that married couples making under $400,000 per year will not see a tax increase, but married couples making over $400,000 per year could. And she would not go on record saying that this was or was not the case. Meaning that depending on how you look at this situation, people who make $200,000 per year could potentially see a tax increase. Now, this is a nuance that we don't really know the meaning of yet, and there is a lot that we need to learn about what is exactly going to go into this tax credit, but that is something that President Joe Biden did stress during the speech, that no individual, and he did use the phrase individual, making less than $400,000 per year will see a tax increase. But based off of what Jen Psaki said last week, it is unclear if married couples will be included in this and if it would be $800,000 in that instance or exactly how that will work. So stay tuned for the clarifications on that. But in general, it seems as though this plan is going to be paid for by corporate structures rather than individuals, at least as of right now. That certainly is the plan that Joe Biden is putting forward. He stated in his speech the problem that American corporate businesses have in not paying their taxes and that this needs to change. He stated that corporate entities will see a tax increase. There will also be a capital gains increase on the highest earners. There will also be loopholes that will be closed for businesses that have been able to take advantage of these loopholes and thus haven't paid any taxes. Now, the last thing that I would like to talk about is what was missing from this speech, most notably two things. Number one is the discussion of student loan forgiveness. Now, this did not come to a surprise to me. I'm sure it didn't come to a surprise to a lot of people, but student loan forgiveness was not something that was really addressed in the speech, and it was not addressed in the American Families Plan as well. Now, it was unlikely that this ever was going to be addressed in the American Families Plan, but I was still thinking that there would be a chance that it may have been, and it was not. So President Joe Biden has been pressured pretty much throughout his entire presidency thus far to give some sort of student loan forgiveness, and he has repeatedly pushed back on this. Now, I think that it is very unlikely that we will see any substantial student loan forgiveness anytime soon. I think it's unlikely that we will see it during his presidency at all. And I think that if we do see it, it will be very targeted student loan forgiveness. But I did think that it was interesting that this was simply left out of this speech entirely, and it was left out of the American Families Plan. But the biggest piece of information that was left out of this speech was a fourth stimulus check. Now, I did a video on this topic a couple of days ago, and in that video, I stated that if we get a fourth stimulus check, I theorized that we would hear about it during this speech. And in that video, I also stated that if we don't hear anything about a fourth stimulus check, that I thought that was indicative of us not getting one at all. And in this speech, it turns out we did not hear anything about a fourth stimulus check. Now, over the last few weeks, President Joe Biden has gotten a lot of pressure of implementing a fourth stimulus check. In fact, 75 Congress members are for implementing a reoccurring stimulus check of $2,000 per month until the pandemic is deemed officially over. Now, what exactly that means, how do we deem if it's over, I'm not exactly sure. But that is something that at least 75 Congress members are interested in. But it's something that I think is extremely unlikely, especially because of the fact that it was not mentioned in this speech. The interesting thing about the American Families Plan as well as the American Jobs Plan is that neither one of these plans are stimulus packages. They are both spending bills. And while the last three stimulus packages that we saw, the CARES Act, the American Rescue Plan, as well as the $600 billion stimulus package that we saw in December of 2020, all three of these packages had a focus of keeping America afloat, of trying to deal with the pandemic and trying to help Americans survive. While on the other hand, with these two spending bills, the focus isn't survival, it's instead growth. And so because of that, there isn't a focus on stimulus checks. There isn't a focus on COVID aid. There isn't a focus on pandemic relief. It's all about growing the American economy from here on out, not trying to survive the pandemic. And that is, in my opinion, the main reason why stimulus checks were not included. And I think that it is interesting to note that I do believe that this marks the end of stimulus relief. I do not think we will see a fourth stimulus package. I don't think we'll see a fourth stimulus check. I do think we could see extensions on some very key stimulus programs. I think we could see an extension on the PPP. I think we could see an extension on the EIDL program. I think we could see an extension on the child tax credit, but I do not think we will see a fourth stimulus check or a fourth stimulus package. But with that being said, you guys, that pretty much summarizes all of the information that was given during this speech, at least in regards to spending bills, stimulus, and things like that. Like I said at the beginning of the video, I will be doing a deep dive on the American Families Plan, but I decided not to include that in this video for the sake of clarity and also for the sake of length of this video as a whole. But if you guys are interested in checking out that video that will be going live tomorrow, diving deep into the American Families Plan, then make sure to subscribe and make sure to hit the notification bell so that you do not miss that whenever that goes live. But like always, if you have any questions, comments, or if you have anything to add, make sure to leave a comment down below. I will be doing an FAQ video in the next couple of days, and so if you have any specific questions that you want addressed in that video, then make sure to leave a comment because I will be compiling those and I will be answering those in a future video in the next few days. But like always, make sure to hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and hit that notification bell, and I will see you guys in the next video.